Good morning, my brothers and sisters. What do I do on a day without rainbows? We're going to get this from Psalm 56. Turn there. Now, here's the situation. David has been anointed king of Israel, but that has not yet been accomplished. God sees him as king, but Saul and the Philistines certainly don't. They have something negative to say about that, and they're pursuing him, and they both want to kill him. Now, here, in this situation, David embeds with one enemy, that is King Achish, the king of the Philistines, to kind of regroup and re-strengthen against his other enemy, which is the dispirited, panicked, angry, and now unanointed previous king of Israel, Saul. So Saul is a good example of not finishing well, and he wants to kill the Lord's anointed, who is David. Now, the introduction of this psalm tells us that even though David went to the Philistines voluntarily, the Philistines didn't know exactly what to do with him, and he was seized, he was detained, he was not at liberty. So the psalm specifically addresses that. The Philistines were never not an enemy of Israel, and David was never their ally. So the Philistines were actually right in viewing him with great suspicion. So in this psalm, we find David at a real place, in real peril, on a real date. And I think that's where it becomes applicable to us here today. Now, just remember this history that David certainly remembered, which was, how about Joseph? In Psalm 105, it says that Joseph wore a collar of iron and leg shackles as well. And though he saved Egypt and he saved Israel's bacon through a 7-year famine cycle, Joseph was never freed from slavery. So wait a minute, you mean one of the best guys in the Bible was a slave his entire adult life? Even though he was a hero, he was never at liberty for 1 second after his brothers sold him as a young man. So the Egyptians, though he was admired for his skill in administration, leadership, and wisdom, they never rewarded him with freedom. They acknowledged that, hey, we got a good thing going with this guy. We better keep him and keep him as a slave. So Joseph was in a circumstance he did not prefer every single day of his life. And David knew his Bible. David knew his history. The Bible's got plenty of rainbows. But it also asks the question, what do people do when there aren't any rainbows, which is kind of where we're going here today. So David does not know how this situation that we're going to describe in this psalm, he doesn't know how this situation is going to turn out. Now we know. So we know that God's going to deliver him in a conventional rainbows and puppies sort of a way. We know now that we know in reading this, that David does not get killed, and he goes on to live a life of intimate up and down sin and forgiveness fellowship with the Lord. But here's a good technique about Bible reading, which is don't read ahead. So the situation was faced by David prospectively, and our reading of it must also be prospectively interpreted. So David, we find him here today in a circumstance that he does not prefer. So what is he going to do? Curse God and die? No. David does not have control of the situation, but he does have control of his trust. So he doesn't have control of the results of this whole thing, but he does have control of his resolve. He doesn't have control of the conclusion, but he does have control of his conduct during the story. He doesn't have control of the outcomes, but he does have control of his outlook. He can't control the development, but he can control his determination through it. So the ending is not clear, but the effort of his soul is. So ultimately, this psalm and David's conduct is about what the soul does when he is in circumstances that he does not prefer. And it's a critical moment of the soul. So I know that David has made a number of very good faith decisions yesterday. The question is, what about today, in today's situation, in today's strife, in today's bad circumstance, when it looks particularly hopeless? What is David going to do? Let's find out in Psalm 56. A Mitchem of David when the Philistines seized him in Gath. Verse 1, Be gracious to me, O God, for man tramples on me. All day long an attacker oppresses me. My enemies trample me all day long, for many attack me proudly. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. That's verse 3. Let me say that again. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Kind of the critical verse of the whole psalm, in my humble opinion. Verse 4, in God whose word I praise, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? All day long, and then he tells us, all day long they injure my cause. All their thoughts are against me for evil. They stir up strife. They lurk. They watch my steps. They have waited for my life. For their crime will they escape? In wrath cast down the peoples, O God. That's David's prayer. Verse 8, you have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? Then my enemies will turn back in the day when I call. This I know, that God is for me. In God, whose word I praise. In the Lord, whose word I praise. In God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me? Let me stop there. So you likely, dear listener, are in a situation today that you don't have control over. And what are you going to do about it? So when you cannot control the results, what do you do with your resolve? When you're afraid, I do what? ... I put my trust in you. What can man do to me? What can financial pressure or evil or cancer do to me? What will I do on a day without rainbows? Plenty, unless you put the Lord into the equation. Is God for me? Is God catching my tears? Can I trust God? Will I trust God? Come back tomorrow and we'll find out more from Psalm 56. Thanks for listening.